Hi, friends. My name is Jessica, and I'm here with Sarah Daigle today. And we are talking about expressing your needs effectively. And I'm really excited to talk about this with you today, Sarah, because I know this is a passion of yours, and your heart is to see people in relationship and all types of relationship
Mhm.
be able to express themselves in a healthy manner. So, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, why is this so important for you?
I think it's so important for me because I didn't used to be very good at this. And I feel like I'm still learning. But I know we've talked before about your marriage, beautiful marriage, and where you learn to express yourself, and my past difficult marriage where I was relatively unable to express myself in a healthy manner. And so I am very passionate about this because it does affect who we are as women. And I think whether our marriages are easy or difficult, that God has the same answer for all of us, regardless of our circumstances. So, to our listeners today, you might be in a difficult marriage, or you might be in one where it's beautiful and you're able to work all these things out. But whatever the case, the heart of God for your voice doesn't change.
Mhm. How have you seen this play out? Like, give an example of a good way to express your need effectively, and one of those ways that's just either destructive to yourself or to the person that you are in relationship with.
Yeah, I am reading a book currently on communication and I love it so much. But one of the examples that I want to throw out there is just, I think women, we often look to somebody else to meet our needs. So it can be very easy in those times when our needs are not met to be grouchy or to be demanding or critical, or even just have this underlying dissatisfaction that targets another person. So let's say maybe we're missing our spouse or a friend, or in a dating relationship, a boyfriend, and we're just like, you're always so busy. Like, why don't you ever have time for me? We can do that to our girlfriends. We might have a friend that we really just want to hang out with, and she's super busy and doesn't have that space and that time for us. But I also think in marriage it's so important, and you are in a good marriage, and so I think that we have the freedom here to talk about marriage with you. And it's so important, I think, instead of targeting someone and going, you never spend time with me, you're so busy, to just simply say, I really miss you and I'd love to hang out with you. I would love some time with you. That when you say you never spend time with me, first of all, that's focusing on the other person as if they really owe you. They owe you that happiness. Um, and you're always so busy, then faults them for being so busy. So what if your husband is working really hard to provide for you, and he's taking on extra hours because he feels the weight of maybe your retirement, maybe he wants to do family vacations with your family. Like, it's more than just putting bread and butter on the table for guys often. And if you do that, basically what you're saying is no matter how hard you work, you're just not quite good enough. Like, you're not cutting it for me. And so I think in a lot of relationships, guys then become defensive or shut down, or it's usually counterproductive. They probably won't just drop what they're doing and come hang out with you just because you say, you're so busy, you never spend time with me. That's not really a good incentive for a guy to come hang out with you. So I think when you say, though, I miss you,
Mm-hmm.
just that simple phrase, I miss you, what that says to the other person, whether that's a spouse or a friend, what that says is you're valuable. You're valuable enough to miss. Like, you're a wonderful person. When I'm not with you, I start craving being with you. And I would love to spend time with you then is a clear reflection of your own heart and what you're needing and what you're desiring. And to me, the difference is really big, but I don't think a lot of women often see that difference. And then the cycle starts, of just reaction, and nobody's needs are met, and the guy feels underappreciated and criticized, and the woman never has her needs met. And so I am so, so passionate about this topic. Um, And I try to use this with my children, with my friends. Um, if I was married, I would try to use it in my marriage. But I think wherever we are as women, whatever our circumstance, whatever our situation, it's up to us to learn how to speak and how to speak really well.
I think one of the main things that you're getting to is, are we setting people's defenses up, or are
Mhm.
we creating a safe space for them as well? Because if we have a need that we need met, that means that there's a little bit of uncertainty in us. And so we can sometimes, in that uncertainty, whether it's feeling lonely, right? Or feeling like maybe the other person doesn't care as much, or there's a lot of scenarios I think we can drum up in our heads when someone's
Yes.
not spending time with us. And
Yes.
so I think that, but that all, the underlying root of all that is just a little bit of insecurity, right? Or just some safety, right? You want to feel safe and secure in this relationship that you're in. And when you go about it the way you're saying, like, you never have time for me, or like, I mean, I've gotten it from friends before, like, you're just so busy all the time.
Yeah.
The defenses come up a little bit because, like, well, I'm not trying to ignore you, it's just, this is where life has been. But when you say, oh, I miss you, or we really need to connect again, I feel like it's been a little too long since we've just spent some real good quality time together. Now the defenses, I think, on both sides are down, and there's space. There's space to be able to move forward in it. And I think, especially in a marriage relationship, the minute the defenses go up, you're now going to be tit for tat on things, right? Because
Yes.
your spouse, and whichever way the communicator is, right? Because there's, I think, certain relationships where the man may be a little bit more emotional and where his, heart on his sleeves, and the women may be a little more reserved. One
Mhm.
may be more physical than the other. You have the dynamics on both ends, whether you're, the wife or the husband. But I think what happens is, if we can lower those defenses, then there's solid ground that we can cover there. And some of it, even other ways, to say it. I know that my husband and I, there's just times that I'll look at him, I feel like we're not connecting right now, babe. I feel like we need a reset, or we just need some time to recenter and refocus ourselves, because we're running on both sides of the spectrum, and then there's this gap that's being created, and nobody's doing anything wrong here, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Work,
exactly. It's part
I'm
of life.
working. It's
Yeah.
part of life.
Yeah.
And it's the up and downs of relationships. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter which relationship you're in, right? It's sometimes where you're going to be maybe talking to your girlfriend every day and all the time because that's the season. And then there's times that you may not talk to each other for months.
Mhm.
But like you said, how we express our need and what we're needing in the relationship really, really matters.
Yeah, I love what you said about how every relationship has ups and downs. I want to talk about that for a minute because I think there is no other thing. I can't think of anything else in life that we expect to always feel good. But when it comes to love, when it comes to marriage, when it comes to friendships, we immediately think there's something really wrong as soon as like it doesn't feel like hot and sparky and we're not like talking to our girlfriend all the time, or you with your husband, you're not connecting, and there's really no reason. You don't know why. It's just this part of life. And I was reading, um, I love this topic. I was reading the other day, and actually, this was a while back, listening to something, and it was talking about how if our brains had the constant dose of oxytocin and serotonin and whatever floods into us with, let's say, a new relationship, a new love, if that kept up, our heart would physically be unable to handle it. Like our body would crumble because that is high intensity. And so, what we do though is, let's say in your marriage, like you love having those feelings, of course, towards your husband, and that's really wonderful. But when they're not there, to know this is perfectly normal. Like
Mm.
you don't have to be on a high all the time. And the most sustainable friendships, marriages, dating relationships are those that are steady and consistent, not necessarily those that are always flooding you with all the feelings that we are kind of taught to expect. And are really fun to have, but simply won't be able to be there all the time. So I think part of our maturity as women is to just step back and not immediately try to fix things. Sometimes there's nothing to fix.
Right.
It's just our friend's really busy,
Yeah.
or our husband's exhausted, or, for you ladies that are dating, your boyfriend might be really busy, or he might just not be feeling like texting or calling, or he might
Mhm.
just need a day or two where he's just man, like he used to be, like don't place those demands on another person, but rather look inward and
Mhm.
go, why am I feeling insecure right now? Why do I need this constant connection all the time, this intensity before I feel okay? And that can be a real indicator as to the health of your own heart.
Yeah.
But if we can get a hold of that, it really grows us up and matures us and really helps us just to live in so much more of a peaceful manner.
Well, and I'm glad you really brought that up because I think the state of our heart is key, right? There has to be a certain amount of self-awareness that we have
Yeah.
to know, am I seeking something from my spouse, my girlfriend, my sister, whoever? Am I seeking something from them continually that I should be going to the Lord with?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
relationships are both vertical and horizontal, right? Every relationship in our lives, there's a spiritual aspect to it, just like there's a physical aspect to it, right? And we obviously know the emotional comes with all of that.
Yes.
There's the mental. But if if our heart posture is continually seeking after other people to fulfill this void, this
Mhm.
this emptiness, like if we can't sit with ourselves, then we have a different issue that we need to address. And there's a deeper need that we have that runs outside of just the I miss being with you. And
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of those moments where it just be like, oh, I miss being with you. I
Oh,
miss seeing you. I haven't talked to you in a
yes.
while. I
Yeah.
want to catch up. And that's all perfectly fine. But if I think as women, because we are so emotional, we're so bonded,
So relational. Yeah.
so relational. And
Yes.
I've been guilty of this myself, as I say it knowing, myself, where I
Mhm.
continually fill my time with other people. Then did I give God the space to be able to show me what's needed? Because what if the reason that your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your spouse or your sister or your mother, whoever you're in a relationship with, that you're feeling this need to connect with them, what if they're going through something and we just haven't given the Lord enough space to speak into our hearts of what maybe we even need to be praying for them?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so I think that's one of those areas where we have to be very careful to distinguish, is it really a we need to make more time, we're disconnected, we need to find a way to connect again, or is it a I have something else that I need to take care of with the Lord, and then I can from that overflow give to the relationships that I have and not seek from those relationships something that they can't necessarily give me. And so I think that's just kind of it's a lot to unpack,
Mhm.
but I think it's so important.
It is so important, Jessica. And it brings us back to anxious attachment styles. We all have an attachment style. Some of them are secure, some of them are avoidant, some of them are anxious. And when you find yourself constantly anxious, if you're not connecting with someone all the time, that is an indicator that you need to look really deep and settle your value with the Lord and the Holy Spirit's presence in your heart to where you are never alone and you have that presence and you don't need another human being to
Mhm.
fill it. Yes, I'm not going to lie here and try to be like super spiritual and say we don't need relationships, because we all know that we do. Like loneliness is one of, it's bad for you. It's bad for your health. It's bad for your emotions. Like we are created to need to be in community with people. And that touches on the girlfriend thing. I want to clarify what you and I are talking about with girlfriend is friends, friend.
Right.
I just want to be very clear for our listeners here that
Mhm.
girlfriends to us are nothing romantic. It's a friend.
Right.
And boyfriends, husbands, that's different. But in our culture nowadays, our woke society, I feel like you can't be too clear on that as Christian women. So, um, anyway, yes. So when you have those anxious impulses or that those deep internal needs that might make you want to gripe at your husband or your friend or your boyfriend, to just really pause and go, what is really going on here? Because if you're anxious and you need to constantly connect because you're anxious, what's going to happen is your friend's going to hang out with you. But what happens in 2 weeks if now she's not hung out with you again? You're
Right.
just going to be like, she just doesn't like me anymore. Like, I guess we're not friends anymore. Instead of being like, wow, we're both moms. This is life. This is, we're going to pick up right where we left off. I have a friend, one of my best friends lives in Washington, and her husband passed away, and she is taxed emotionally, physically, in every way. She's taxed, and life is so different for her than when I met her. Like, she had so much time and energy to give when I met her, and we just became best friends. And we made Christmas cookies together. We hiked together. We hung out together. It was just always, her and I, we had so much fun living life together, and our daughters were best friends. Now that her husband's passed away, I can send her a text and I might not get a response. I can call her and she might not call me back. But when I am able to get a few minutes with her, or 30 minutes on the phone, or I go see her, we pick up right where we left off.
Mhm.
Neither one of us has that expectation of this constant thing.
Yeah.
So our internal health as women really affects our voice. It affects how we express ourselves. And nowhere is this so important in a marriage. And so that brings me back to, I would love for you to share how you connected with your husband recently at Lowe's and how you guys worked through your son's graduation party. Just give us some real life examples of how you and your husband manage some of these things.
Yeah. And so for anyone listening, my husband and I, we've been married 19 and a half years at this point.
It's so
We
awesome.
have two boys. And it's been hard, right? Like I think people sometimes hear that or they'll see the fruits of it now and
Mhm.
not understand that there was a whole lot of toiling and work and things that went into being able to have the fruit of what we have right now. And I
Yes.
do want to also make sure that for every woman out there, they understand this does not mean it's perfect either, right?
Yeah.
We are not talking about a perfect marriage. We are not talking about perfect communication between couples. We're talking about healthy. And healthy means I can express myself and my needs. He can express himself and his needs. And there are times we get it right, and there are times we get it a little bit wrong, and then we correct so that we can get it right the next time. And so we've our family's been through a lot recently, but this summer has been really intense because my oldest he graduated high school and is getting ready to move to college, and it's a lot of transition and it's a lot of change that's happening, and we really really wanted my oldest to feel celebrated this year. He is such a champ and he's such a good kid,
He's
and
amazing.
we had a lot of challenges with my younger child. He has had a lot of health issues. So, in many ways, he's kind of been in the shadows a little bit, knowing the amount of attention his brothers needed. And so, for my husband and I, it was extremely important that he felt celebrated with his accomplishment of finishing high school and his decision, to move on to college next.
Yeah.
And so we planned this huge party for him. We had 80 plus people that were coming to the party. It was a dual event. It was a 2-day thing. I know it's going to sound over the top for some people, but there's a lot of context behind the why.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. It
we
was
had
beautiful.
we had planned this pool party, and we were going to do a pool party the day before his actual graduation. And we had family from out of town, friends from out of town, and then just all the friends and family that we've come to be able to be in relationship with here in
Mhm.
North Carolina. And everything was great. And we were setting everything up and everything was looking beautiful. And about 15 minutes before everyone was supposed to arrive, we had a monsoon of rain fall. And
It
we
was
had
terrible.
shift and pivot. And it was hard because we planned and planned and planned and had this beautiful event all built out. And it's not that I didn't have a plan B, because I'm the type of girl that has a plan A, B, and C for everything. It
Mhm.
was that when we looked at the weather, there was like literally no chance of rain during the hours of the party at all, up
Wow.
until it
Yeah.
actually rained.
Wow.
Like, it was one of those where we looked, we saw, we if we needed to shift, we would have shifted, but we didn't know we needed to shift.
Yeah.
And the thing that I remember the most that was the key for a successful rest of the evening was my husband came to me and asked me, what did I need?
Mhm.
And he didn't freak out about everything. He kind of knows how I function already, right? I don't get frazzled really easily with things. He knows I just need a moment, and then I'll be able to redirect and come up with some kind of strategy to make it work. And that moment, though, was everything I needed to not feel like my defenses went up,
Mhm.
but to really feel safe enough to express my disappointment in what was happening while still coming up with a plan for a plan B. And so we moved everything to our house. We moved everything into the garage, and everyone pitched in. We had friends that I called and said, can you pick up some chairs here for us? We need extra chairs. We let everyone know to pivot over to our house. And we had a wonderful event, and it was in the garage, and it was great. And Josiah felt loved and Josiah felt celebrated, and nothing about what happened changed the desired outcome. It
Mhm.
didn't happen the way we thought it was going to happen, but it took us working together to make it happen. And at one point, we had talked about this previously. We literally set everything up. There were a few people there. We were soaking wet because we were coming from, the pool and bringing everything back over. And we prayed over the meal, and we welcomed everyone that was there. And then we said, okay, now we're going to go get presentable. We love everyone. You're at home. And we disappeared for about 20-25 minutes,
Oh, wow. It was a while.
and it was fine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's the safety for it to feel fine. He didn't feel this need to be taking care of everybody that's there. Like, how are you going to leave? You can't leave and leave everybody there. Like, he didn't make me feel like, I mean, I obviously, it's my kid's party. I want to look presentable, and I want to look pretty, and I want to make sure that we have good memories. And in no moment did he make me feel like I had to stay in the state that I was in to take care of everyone else. We more so invited everybody to help take care of us. And
Mhm.
that moment where they took care of us, we let everyone there know what we needed. Hey, everyone, we need a minute to go get dressed. So
Mhm.
that was one other example of us expressing our needs and communicating our needs. And we went on for hours there, and we laughed and we joked around, and the kids danced, and we had a good time. And I think that was really, really important for us to be able to have expressed our needs to each other, but to also those around us, so that we wouldn't feel the weight of having to be on and
Yeah.
perform or anything like that.
Yeah. You were not just in a position of feeling some internal emotion. You were also in a position of having external circumstances that you couldn't change and you really didn't like. So I'd like to talk because there's going to be some women hearing this and they're going to go, well, my husband would never talk to me that thoughtfully. He would never just look at me and go, what do I need? He doesn't help, like he doesn't notice. What
Mhm.
what would you say to those women, Jessica?
I would say you have to play to your husband's strength.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe his strength is not what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
That's my husband's strength in general. He is a servant. He loves to help people and take
Acts
care
of
of people.
service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
acts of service. Um, but for others, they're really good at entertaining people, right? And they're really good at taking care of people. And this is where it takes a team of people, right? It wasn't just my husband and I doing all of this. My sister was there, my best friend was there, you were there, everyone was there, and was, how can I help? So if your husband is not necessarily the one that's going to be able to help you set it all up and get it ready, then rely on the people that can, and just ask your husband to do the things that he's really good at doing.
Yes.
So if it's, can you just welcome people as they come in, let them know to give us a couple minutes, we'll take care of everything. you've now communicated with your husband and given him something to do where he also feels useful and he feels like he's being helpful, not making him feel like, well, why you should know what I need right now. Nobody knows what they need in that kind of situation because nobody planned for that situation, right? And
Yes.
so I
Yeah.
think it's just really important to know your husband's strengths and play to them versus making him feel bad for not being different or who you wished he was, because that doesn't get anyone anywhere. That just creates frustration and that just creates anxiety and that just creates pressures that no one needs. And so
Yes.
if Jerry, for example, was not that person, I had four other people around that I can say, hey, can you do this? Put this here, put this there, let's get this up here. And
Mhm.
they could have handled that perfectly fine. And he could have handled the guests, because that is one of his other strengths, right? Just being very personable and hospitable. So just really play to it and understand it and know it. And don't get frustrated by his weaknesses because we all have them.
Mhm.
And so if you're feeling that your husband is weak in a certain area or even with communication and that you can't fully express your needs the way that I'm talking about that I was able to express my needs, then that's where I would challenge the women to take a little bit of a step back
Mhm.
and instead of maybe hounding your husband about the things that you wished he was doing a little bit better, maybe spend time praying with the Lord first and foremost for your heart towards it. What
Mhm.
do you need to potentially see or shift, right? And if there's nothing, because there are just some guys that need some help and there's some guys that are really horrible at communication, right? And so that's just, we're not going to sugarcoat that, we're not going to pretend that doesn't exist, but
Yeah.
then give it to the Lord in prayer and ask him to show you how to best reach him, and ask the Lord to soften his heart because the Lord changes our hearts. And
Mhm.
so I think that would be my best advice for someone who may not have the communication that I currently have. And again, this is 19 years in of us being able to say what we have now. This is not necessarily
Yeah.
what we had at year 3, at year 7, at year 9. Everything's a building block, and we have to celebrate each one of those steps that we take as well.
Yes. Yes. And I'd like to circle back to also, I believe that even if it's not your husband's strength, but it's something that you really need to just express that. Like, don't put all of your stock and all of your emotional health or happiness in your husband's response, but just go, hey, I really need help right now. Could you please set these tables up? That appeals to his desire. A man, if he's a good man and he loves a woman, he always wants to, solve a problem for her. What happens is women often make him feel like the problem. So
Mhm.
instead of going to him to solve something for her, basically she's saying, you are the problem. And I see that attitude is pervasive everywhere. Like, men basically can't do anything right because of women's disgruntled attitude of wanting that man to solve, just
Mhm.
acting like he's a problem instead of a blessing that could potentially help her problem. And so I think tapping into that is so vital. Like, if Jerry hadn't noticed your need that day and offered on his own, you could have said, Jerry, I'm really struggling here and I really need help setting these tables up. Could you help? He probably would have been right on it, whether or not that's his gift.
Mhm.
So our meeting's almost over, but I love this topic. And I think we hit on some really good ones. But I want to encourage every woman out there to remember that you're autonomous with God first. It is no human being's responsibility to keep your heart settled in peace at all times of the day or night. That is your responsibility. If you're feeling anxious, it's your responsibility to take care of that. If you have a need, it's your responsibility to express it. And first and foremost, look to God, because if a human being's not meeting your needs, God absolutely will. And he'll place, like Jessica said in that party example, she also had her mother, and I think her mother-in-law, right, was there too. I think I met her. Yeah. And her friends. And Jessica had all these things in place that day, people surrounding her, and everyone met a different need. So don't look to just your husband or just your boyfriend or just your friend to satisfy your heart. Look first of all to God, and then utilize everything in your life for different needs that you might have. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you, Sarah. And the one last thing I would say to everyone is the number one reason I would say that it's so important to express your needs is because none of us are mind readers.
Mm-hmm. Especially men.
Especially men,
I keep
right?
hearing them say it's so unfair the way women get upset when we can't read their minds.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something we do that's really bad.
So I'm glad that you came back to it about the expressing your needs and making sure that you're verbalizing it. And then once you verbalize it, if nothing's changed, and then, kind of in some of the things I talked about, but remember, nobody's a mind reader. So just like you don't know what they might need unless they express it, they won't know what you need. And so really, I hope that the women will walk away from this just with maybe a little bit more confidence to be able to say to whichever relationship they're in, whether it's with their spouse, their boyfriend, their best friend, whoever, to just be able to express their heart and their need in a healthy way. And I really hope that they also understand that we've all been there and it is
Yeah.
up and down, right? So even if you don't get it right the first time, just keep trying. Just keep
Yeah.
trying.
Humanity is real, not only for, them, but for us. And to accept your weak parts, not accept them as in sit with them and be okay with them, but to be like, gosh, I'm so human. I messed up. I'm going to learn from this, and then build and build and build your own character, your own virtue. Virtue takes patience, takes faithfulness, but just to build that. So,
Well,
yeah,
thank you for the conversation. It was a great conversation. I think
yes.
we need more conversations like this of women that are willing to be vulnerable and honest and just talk about some of the hard things that we deal with. And so I can't wait for our next conversation that we have. But for now, we are going to say bye to all of our listeners that are listening to us. So have a wonderful day, ladies, and know that you have two girls here that are cheering you on in your journey and who understand just a little bit of what you're going through, because we've been there on
Yes.
both ends of the spectrum. So
Yes. And if you want to read more, I write about some of this stuff on my blog, my website. It's sarah-daigle.org, and that's SARA-DAIGLE.org. So I look forward to talking to you more.
bye.